Hi, everyone. My name is Sunny. I'm so glad that you were able to join us. We're going to be kicking off an artist dialogue today with Houston based Rishabh Lamsal. Um, and we're going to be talking about the new release we just dropped. It's a song, it's a bhajan in Nepali. This is the first time that Nepali language honors the Qawwali genre. We're going to be talking about all that, the creation process, um, and just what it means for us to include regional languages into different everyday things that we do in our life, whether that be music and a genre of music that we love, or it be practical things across Houston and across this country that then because the use of this language provides an access point to people. Um, so to get started, I first of all want to introduce Rishab, who will be speaking a lot more eloquently about Nepali in this bhajan. Hey
Hello, everyone.
Rishab,
Hey, Sunny.
hey, thanks for joining. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Hey, I'm just quite excited about us talking about the creation of this bhajan and what it took to sort of finally get it out there.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. It's been in making for I want to say almost a year now. We've been trying to find the right version, and yeah, it's yeah,
I feel like a lot, of stuff goes in the back and before the production gets released. So I know the feeling that you have.
yeah.
Let us first of all ground ourselves in this music video project. What we're trying to do with a lot of our releases is tie it into what's happening for us locally and tie it into issues that are important to us locally. That artists like Rishabh and I certainly have viewpoints on, but we can also use art as an activator, as a catalyst to talk about these things. Um, and arts, historically, whether it be in the United States or across South Asia, has been this igniter of conversation. So today, the theme that we really want to talk about is language justice, and the basic definition of it is for us to create multilingual spaces where we empower people to use the language that they're most comfortable in, and that empowers them um, to speak in that, to communicate in that and to move away from systems that use one language as the dominant language. Um, so, how we come to this space, Rishabh and I, is that Qawwali is in its traditional sense sung in Punjabi, it's sung in Farsi, and it's sung in Urdu. Um, but there isn't certainly one language that dominates. Of course, wherever you are in South Asia, you'll have performers and cabals sing in that language. But overall, as we look at the genre, I can't say that oh, it's dominated by Avdi or Urdu versus Punjabi or something like that. Um, so that's what brings us here. Specifically, I want to talk about Rishabh. Rishabh, your introduction to Qawwali and even before that, right? From what I understand, um, you are today a Houston-based artist, but you've been singing bhajans for 15 years. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I remember my mom. She got me in this singing journey since I was 7 years old. She started making me riyaz, and basically since then I've been singing bhajans or whatever I could learn and sing. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Um, as a parent who steps in to teach, how was that experience? Because yeah, all of us have had gurus and ustads, and so on one end you have the sort of the strictness and all from a teacher, and then also the love and the caring nature of your mom. So how was she as a teacher?
I want to say she's a pretty great teacher. Yeah. There aren't so if like compared to like a regular Guruji, like there isn't a much more lenience you can get. Like you can't just go home and like not practice. Like you have to practice because the teacher
Right.
is right there. So
Yeah, that's true.
that's like that's but it's pretty great. I think having her as a teacher has given me an understanding of like an understanding and an appreciation for the music that I don't think I would have without her teachings.
Yeah. And do you remember at all? If you do, what was the first thing she taught you? I mean, I know we're talking about more than 15 years ago because you've already been singing for that long.
Uh, so I remember my first bhajan was it's a pretty popular bhajan in India, especially in Vrindavan. It's called Choti Choti Gaiya Choti Chote Gwal,
Uh-huh.
Choto Se Mero Madan Gopal.
Oh, that's right. That's I
Yeah,
actually know that one. That's really
yeah, yeah.
interesting.
It's a popular bhajan, but yeah.
And so she taught it to you, and you would sing it within the family, or were you
So
preparing to sing it outside?
So I think in the beginning, my mom was just like test driving me, like if I was like if I had even the drive for it. So she taught me like it's a pretty simple version, right? Like it's
Uh,
not that complicated. So I
there's a lot of
think
lyrics, though.
um, but it's a repetitive lyrics, right? Like
Yeah,
yeah, but so I think that's why it was also a bit easy. But I think in the end, I think it worked out. Like
yeah,
it was fun. Yeah.
that's awesome. And that sort of got you started into the singing world
Yeah,
itself. Huh?
so singing and harmonium, she had me training in both from the beginning. So I remember like harmonium was the easier actually, like because I just memorized them and I just played it on like the second day. She was like, okay, that's nice. So yeah, that
That's
worked out.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And I think what's another interesting thing is, and that sort of relates to what we're talking about today, is um, that you are in a household that many languages are spoken. So,
Yes.
um, talk about that. Was Hindi and Nepali and maybe even English, was that always part of your household? And um, how natural is it for you now to go between one and the other?
So as a person who lived in Vrindavan, which is in India, with parents who were born in Nepal, there is bound to be like, intermingle between languages. So in
Sure.
school, you're speaking in Hindi or even Braj Bhasa at that point, because like, as kids, uh,
Hmm.
like my classmates learned from their parents who were probably like, born like native to that region and they spoke Braj Bhasha for the most part. And
Mm.
my parents tell me that I also had that in my tongue for like a couple of years until like they helped me get rid of it. So I can't do it anymore, but
Oh no, that's a beautiful language too. I feel
yeah,
like,
like, it's pretty
the
sweet.
dialect is amazing.
Yeah. So I can't do it anymore, but I think yes, there's bound to be like so at home I also usually speak Nepali and we also did these like trips to Gujarat. So I there's like this weird part of me where I can also like read Gujarati and I can understand it, but I can't speak it sadly. So,
Okay,
but
but this is really powerful. I mean,
yeah.
because my my understanding of a language has always led me to believe that each language like has a character. There is just a type of feeling you get with a particular language. So when I think about Punjabi versus Hindi or Urdu or English, like I feel like each has a different character, and it also teaches you another way of communicating. So it's not just like the literal communication of a different language and a different vocabulary, but
Hmm.
it's just a different way of talking. Like the example I like to use is um, in Hindi or maybe in also in Nepali, as respect, you say G.
Hmm. Yeah.
There isn't really a translation of G in English.
Yeah. That's true.
uh, there's a Mr., there's a doctor, so there are these sort of formal addresses that you have that can show accomplishment or qualification, but not necessarily a G. And so there's just an adab, a culture of a language itself.
Hmm.
So has that been something that um, in your garden of knowledge have you sort of benefited from that because Nepali uh, addresses subjects or talking differently than Hindi, perhaps?
I can't really point fingers, but I believe there are like many similarities between the languages, right? Like, and even when there are differences. Like, uh, so I mean, the example you gave, G, right? In Nepali, like, a similar aspect would be like we say Jew, right? So that's one of the similarities that I can think of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So when it comes to, let's talk about this song itself.
Yeah.
Um, the song was really interesting because we were able to um, essentially take a bhajan that is relatively popular within the Nepali community. Is that right? It is.
Yeah.
Okay, just
From my like,
just
I've been
confirming.
hearing it since childhood. So I mean, yeah, I think it has a pretty good viewership on YouTube as well. So I'll assume
Yeah,
it's pretty popular. Yeah.
yeah, and then it also is something that you felt could be molded into Qawwali, because we were trying to do both, get
Yeah.
something that people had heard before, but also something that wouldn't feel so off or different in the Qawwali genre. So, the
Yeah.
first thing I'd love to do is just look at their lyrics, and could you share, the meaning of the lyrics itself?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So tan man bachan le Prabhu naam gaun, Hare Ram Hare Krishna bandai ramau. So tan man bachan le Prabhu naam gaun. The literal translation is I sing the name of Lord with my heart and soul, basically, right? Hare
Yeah.
Ram Hare Krishna bandai ramau. I say the Lord's name and I stay happy the whole day. So
Hmm.
those are the first two lines of the song.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then when we were composing this, the obviously other things came up, like what we should do in the song and stuff like that. But before we get into that, uh, I started this conversation by saying Qawwali is in Urdu, Punjabi, and Farsi. So what does it mean for us to be singing a Nepali bhajan? Um, and what does that mean to a Nepali audience that we're now singing it in the Qawwali genre itself? Do you have thoughts on that? Have you thought about that as we've created this bhajan?
I mean, definitely, yeah. So, as a Nepali person myself, like even though I have lived in India, um, because I was in part of specifically in Vrindavan, uh, I had not really interacted with Qawwali, right?
Hmm.
So, and I assume it's the same for like most people in Nepal, because like when I talk to them and they're like, "You're part of what group now?" So, like, what genre is that? So, like, they ask me all sort of questions. So, Qawwali is not really that much popular. So, with mine, like, the intention to when we created this piece was to create something that's familiar in material for the Nepali audience,
Yeah.
but like have that Qawwaliness to the piece, so it brings it opens a pathway for them, so like they can experience this beautiful genre more.
Yeah, I really love what you said about open up the pathway, right? Like it's really it goes back to the whole like culture of languages, but in a different way. Like I've also felt the same, where like the way that Qawwali brings you into a devotional space is
Hmm.
very unlike anything I've experienced. And so I also felt like when I was um, hearing something or creating something in Hindi, which would be a traditional bhajan in this space, like I was singing something that was old, but because I was singing in this Qawwali ish way, it was becoming new again.
Hmm.
So I feel that that's kind of exciting.
Actually, I can relate to that as well. So when we were doing this Nepali bhajan, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so the actual tempo of the bhajan is like, it's a bit slower than what we did, so it gave like it was just a like different bhajan for me. So like it's like, so when I think about it in myself, like these are like two separate bhajans that, like, that I can listen to like one by like in sequence, like I'm not gonna say that, oh, I just listened to this person, so I'm not gonna listen to it anymore. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think they're unique enough in their own sense that I think that's pretty great. It's pretty
Yeah, so
powerful.
they're similar but also separate. Like they have their
Yeah,
own identity.
yeah.
Um, and what do you think about you know the Qawwali ness that we added to this, right? This bhajan, for example, um, Qawwali has this very characteristic thing, which is a gira, which is this knot tying that you do on a particular theme. And the theme we used was mo, um, which is attachment to a worldly thing.
Hmm.
Um, so how'd you go about uh, bringing in new poetry that we then added into this gira of Qawwali? So just because everyone probably doesn't know what a gira is, if you're singing a line in Qawwali, you take a part of that line or that whole line and you start repeating just that small part, and that's called a gira. And that gira was on mo. Um, so Rishabh, if you wouldn't mind explaining a little bit of your process and how you got the poetry, because it's pretty beautiful.
Yeah. So when we were preparing for the song, we wanted to do a gira. So I just started hunting for poetries here and there, and then I found these sets of poetries by Sant Kabir. And since we had recently done other works by him as well, I
Yeah,
want to say
that's
like
right.
almost a year ago, so I
Yeah,
was like, why not use him? And because it will help us understand more as well. So I think first I should explain what moh is. I believe because
totally. Yeah, yeah.
I don't think many people are. So moh in Hinduism, moh is attachments to the worldly desires and worldly things. It's one of the teachings in Hinduism. So um when I started looking for the poetries, I wanted to look specifically for the one that addressed the like how do we get out of it, or like what's holding us in, like in this kind of situations, right? So the first one I picked was Mohanadi Vikaral hai koi na utare par Satguru ke vat saath lai hans hoye jamnyar. The literal translation is the river of delusion is horrible, none can cross it. With God as your boatman, you can avoid the swan like delusions in the river. That's like the
Mhm.
literal translation. And I like this translation because it sort of has that this mo- the illusions in this world are like they're horrible, right?
Mhm.
And nobody can get out of it on their own.
Yeah.
But on the second line, Kabir gives like a more as like a with God as a boatman, like someone who can guide you. So the actual word in the poem is Sadguru, right?
Mhm.
Sadguru is usually a teacher, right?
Mhm.
But I've seen like in many translations, like Sadguru is either a teacher or like it can also be guru, and that's all. Also, I think one of I just thought like that was really cool. So with God as a boatman, like and there's like the and I also looked up right that Kabir uses Kabir uses the imagery of swan a lot, and when he uses it, it usually means like worldly attachment. So like Kabir uses swan and mo as in like
Interchangeably.
yeah, interchangeably, like
Mm.
a lot. So I thought that was pretty cool. So what he means to say is like you can God as a boatman, like you can avoid the swan in the river,
Mm.
which I thought was like really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was I really liked using that. Yeah.
So I mean, I think that what was really powerful was also something that happened naturally, but it also fits in with what we're talking about here, which is the song, the bhajan is in Nepali,
Yeah, that's right.
but Kabir writes
Avdi.
in Avadi in sort of this older Hindi type
Yeah.
language.
Yeah.
So um, I think that's really something that I've done myself in Qawwali before,
Hmm.
but it came naturally to you, or
Yeah.
did you think about this purposefully? How did it happen?
Um, I want to say it's both because like like I wanted to, since I found the poetries by Kabir on Moho, I was like, and we wanted to do it since we had already worked with Kabir before. It was I want to say it was intentional, but at the same time I didn't. It was, I also want to say it was like it just happened, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
but yeah.
I mean, but it's powerful because I think that um, these are these are like gems. Whether
Hmm,
we talk about this Nepali bhajan, or we talk about Kabir's dohes, Kabir's couplets, or we talk about traditional Qawwali kalams, they are these are gems of wonderful philosophers that essentially get encapsulated and maybe even um, stuck in with a group of people who know that language.
hmm,
And
yeah,
so bringing it in this light almost allows other people to access it or discover it. Um, and it felt like you were doing that purposefully because that was part of your journey, right? You came from Kabir,
yeah.
and then you went into Nepal, the bhajan itself.
Yeah, so the funny thing is that I did not had have a second thought when like I saw Hindi. I was like, oh, okay, I can use that. Like I did not think of like a language difference there. So I think I can attribute that to like me being a Nepali. Like uh, I don't know about most Nepalis, but all the Nepalis that I've met, like they understand Hindi like pretty well. So I
Yeah.
think that sort of like kicked me off in that direction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I also think that us releasing it in Houston
Hmm.
is part of the exciting thing because Houston as a city is so diverse. I mean,
Yeah.
there are so many different South Asians here. So our audience really speaks or has heard these languages. They may be familiar with one and not the other, and then we're essentially introducing them to one or the other. And that's sort of what brings us here, right? Like this idea of language and who has access to knowledge um, is interesting because I've never thought about this, but sometimes knowledge can be restricted by the language um, that it's communicated in because
Hmm.
everybody may not be fluent in that
Yeah.
language. Like for example, the Nepali thing. Um, Part of what was really fun for me was I was getting what each of these words meant through Rishabh, but the translations that were done, extensively by your family,
Yeah.
and your mom and your dad specifically, who were not only just talking about the lyrics itself, but the phonetic pronunciation
Yeah.
itself. So I think that's really exciting. Um, I really want to just thank you for allowing us to do this. This was uh, a really fun bhajan, and I think it just expanded the genre of Qawwali in a beautiful way.
Yeah, I think it was pretty cool. I did not have any expectations at the beginning of this, but I think it was great. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
hopefully more,
it
more to
was
come,
fun.
right?
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah,
Yeah. So we'll wrap this up by saying that our South Asian community is vast. We've spoken mainly in English here, but I do hope that um, if you'd come to our concerts, you'll enjoy other languages being spoken, being sung, um, and remember, this is all part of what art can do. Art is not this passive thing that should be enjoyed in auditoriums only. It is a way to challenge what is acceptable and what's the norm. Um, so, with that being said, please remember that polling locations are open right now. You can vote. Early voting, I think, goes on until Friday. Rishab, I don't know how you're planning on voting, but I'm thinking about voting early because
yeah,
um, it's just easier. I feel like there's
definitely. Yeah,
nobody there, very small lines and stuff,
yeah,
um, and that's the thing. The last day of early voting is this Friday. Now, if you don't get a chance to do that, do remember that Tuesday we are looking at electing our mayor, city council folks, and some really important issues. Um, all that to be said, next year is also going to be a really interesting election. So uh, register, If you weren't able to do that this year, vote definitely. Um, please, please vote so all of our voices can be heard and all of our um, diversity can really be represented. So with that, thank you, Rishabh, so much for joining. We really appreciate all the love and intentionality that you brought to the project.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. It was
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Good night.